The sonic screwdriver is an iconic part of Doctor Who, however sometimes that lock-picking device can go to a writer's head. Today we're diving into the world of screenwriting. We'll explore storytelling's nasty little gremlin child, the deus-ex-machina, and look at why the sonic screwdriver is a blessing for pacing but a curse for tension. This is Doctor Who, the sonic screwdriver problem. Before we can delve into any issues and storytelling techniques, it makes sense to first look back at the history of the Doctor's favourite toy. For all those who've wanted me to talk more about the classic era on the channel, let me just say, Merry Christmas! The sonic screwdriver was first introduced during the second Doctor's era in a currently missing serial titled Fury from the Deep. Back in the early days, the Sonic was used pretty sparingly and its abilities were stripped back compared to the modern show. The Sonic would dismantle equipment and unlock doors. Occasionally it would be used for other things, but nothing major. It was all very tame. As the classic series continued, the Sonic's abilities grew. It would detonate mines and create holes in force fields. It appeared on screen quite a bit, but its abilities, its prominence in the story, was still quite small. The Doctor barely, if ever, waved it around with such vigour like the 11th or 13th Doctor. This theatricality is very much a new Who addition. Many of the producers of the classic era were actually pretty adamant that the device should be used as sparingly as possible, worried that it would harm the stories if writers relied too heavily on the gadget. They believed, and quite rightly too, that the show would lose all of its stakes if the Doctor constantly had a device that could get him out of any situation. However, during season 19, producer John Nathan Turner had finally had enough and decided that the Sonic would be written out of the show completely. In the serial The Visitation, the Sonic is destroyed to stop the Doctor from escaping captivity.
I feel as though you've just killed an old friend.
And although we've seen the Sonic be destroyed many times in the show, this wasn't just a quick little plot obstacle, but instead this change stuck. The sonic screwdriver didn't appear in the show again during the classic run. I really hope I've got that fact right. I have. Shove it up your ass. I have. The Sonic wouldn't reappear until the Doctor Who TV movie, which is a whole other video I will make one day, but again, it's barely used. Blink and you'll miss it. However, in 2005, Russell T Davies decided he would utilise the Sonic in ways the show had never done before. Suddenly, this gadget wasn't just a fun little prop that was occasionally used, but instead a major part of the show's iconography. The Doctor used the device in most of the stories. The 9th Doctor uses it a hell of a lot considering he only has 13 episodes. And as the seasons went by, the Sonic's abilities grew. It still unlocked doors and blew up the occasional device, but it can now scan entire databases in a matter of seconds, detect and intercept signals, reattach barbed wire, cut rope. It could modify phone signals so companions could have a natter with their mum, interfere with teleports, remote control the TARDIS, and many other things. And as the showrunners came and went, the usage of the gadget only intensified. The 11th Doctor used the Sonic more than any other incarnation of the character. It's basically an extra limb for the man. And although a lot of these were rarely the climax of the plot, its heavy use didn't go unnoticed by fans. There are many articles and videos talking about the Sonic's very frequent appearances. And although yes, I'm adding to this list, I hope to explore it slightly differently, very much talking from a screenwriting perspective. Because although the sonic screwdriver can sometimes feel a bit overkill in New Who, there's a very good reason for it. It's all a matter of time. Every era of Doctor Who really is a sign of the times. You can basically study how audiences interacted and consumed media from the different variations of the show. The classic era was structured incredibly differently to what we're used to now. Instead of 45 50-minute episodes, the runtime was instead 25 minutes an episode, meaning that stories would be stretched on for 4, 6, sometimes 10 parts. It was, and I don't necessarily mean this as a criticism, but much slower in pace. And sometimes this was an issue. There are some fantastic stories from the classic era that I believe suffer from an awful lot of padding. The revival era saw a big change. Instead we got 13 episodes a year, each one roughly 45 minutes in runtime. Occasionally stories would stretch on for over 2 parts, but even then the writers had a lot less time to indulge in their creations. For lack of a better phrase, they had to fucking get on with it. And the most recent era is a sign of the times too. What with Disney Plus being involved, suddenly Doctor Who was a streaming show. Or at least cosplaying as one. I genuinely do not believe that Doctor Who fits the streaming model, but that's a story for another day. And due to this new fast-paced structure, the Sonic was kind of a blessing if used correctly, because it meant with a quick press of a button, the door could blow open or the information could be gained, allowing the story to move on quick. There was no time to have the Doctor meander down corridor after corridor trying to work out what was going on. Instead, they had to scan a computer, get the facts, and continue with the action. The same goes for the psychic paper, which was first introduced in The End of the World. A lot of the time during the classic era, the Doctor would be imprisoned for trespassing. Now, the psychic paper cuts that awkward filler out. He can show them ID, they believe it, and on with the story we go. And then if you need the Doctor to be locked up, the paper doesn't work or it's a deadlock seal. It's simple but effective storytelling. Another major reason why the Sonic was used more in 2005 is simply because of toys. It's such an easy thing to make merchandise of, and toys were a fucking massive business for Doctor Who during the 2000s. Shops would be full of action figures and remote control Daleks, and of course the screwdriver. It made money, and money talks in any industry, especially in telly. So all these points make sense to me and I can't really criticise them. So what are the issues? Predictability. For me, that's the main issue. You can see the solution at times before the problem has even properly been explained because we know the Sonic will be able to help in some way. It's an unfortunate lack of rules. In any fiction, but especially sci-fi and fantasy, rules really matter. Anything that could be described as magical needs to be grounded in some kind of rule, what it can and can't do. Otherwise, you get nasty little plot holes running throughout your story. One of my biggest issues with the Harry Potter franchise, other than the writer behind it, is how unfocused the magic is throughout the books. Time travel is introduced and then completely ignored for the rest of the series because there weren't enough rules to ground it. The same goes with the sonic screwdriver. Now, I think when a show has been running for over 60 years, you kinda have to be a bit loose with any kind of rules or canon. Too much of a regimented list of do's and don'ts will eventually bite you in the arse if you're trying to tell a story that can run and run and run. The series changes and shifts, and that means the canon must at times too. Not hugely, you don't need to completely gut what was there before, but little changes throughout are not only natural but necessary. However, if you give the prop too much to do, you're opening up a whole can of worms. For example, the next time the Doctor is caught in the middle of a battlefield, it'd be fair for the audience to wonder why he doesn't just magic a force-filled wall. This is so out of the blue, it is so unnecessary, and it unfortunately kills the tension of the entire scene. Because the setup is great. They're stuck in a room, two armies are going at each other in the middle of a hallway. What do our characters do to get out of this one? They're going to have to think quickly, use their brains, and just make a wall. Make a fucking wall, just wall it. Wall it, Doctor. Oh, Doctor, you know that time you made a wall? Yeah, fucking wall it again. This is probably one of the worst examples of a writer using the Sonic as a get out of jail card. Because it's not just the characters in this moment that are trapped, it's very obviously the writer. In this moment, the writer needs to basically be as clever as the lead to work out how to solve the problem. So it's just easy to make the solution the gadget he always carries around. It's the absolute definition of the deus-ex-machina. Speaking of, a lot of people say the Sonic is a deus-ex-machina most of the time, and to that I disagree. Deus-ex-machina means God from the machine, and it is when a seemingly impossible problem in a story is suddenly solved by an unexpected and unlikely occurrence. Now usually this happens at the climax of a story, and Doctor Who has unfortunately had quite a few of them, but it can happen throughout, like this Sonic scene in the Star Beast. The reason I believe the Sonic doesn't always fit the deus-ex-machina description is actually because we as an audience are all too aware of its mighty powers. Usually, apart from the Star Beast wall scene, we kinda know when and how the Sonic will be used. That's definitely cheap storytelling, you can call it lazy, but it's not a deus-ex-machina most of the time because the Sonic is an established part of most stories. And in a way, that highlights a problem of its own. This magical stick that can basically do anything isn't a deus-ex-machina because we as an audience just know it's there and accept it. That's not great, that's kind of a problem. I'd argue no lead character should ever have something that powerful on them all of the time. Another issue that the Sonic leads us to is just lazy story beats. It's used so much at times when it just doesn't need to be. Sometimes you can just kick a door down. I'm all for using it to move the story along at a quick pace, but I don't see the point in using it if there's another quick paced solution. We do need a Doctor to show just how intelligent and quick thinking they are, and the Sonic does at times take that away. Also, the screwdriver has led to some pretty cheap moments of tension throughout the years. The reason I love the Sonic being destroyed in the 5th Doctor's tenure is because it has consequences. He doesn't suddenly get a new one in the next episode. However, throughout New Who, we have seen the Sonic be destroyed or get lost many times, and it never really leads to anything outside the episode. Before the credits roll, you can guarantee the Doctor will get a new one. And yes, I'm sorry, but I'm counting the sunglasses in that too. They are the same thing, just in a different format, and are used throughout the series just as much as the screwdriver usually is. The glasses even get broken and yet magically reappear later on. And this isn't me saying the Sonic should break and never return, but just give me a few episodes or half a season without it. Let that moment land. Also, sometimes just have it be a little bit unreliable. The 13th Doctor makes her own Sonic on Earth. This is the perfect excuse to have to use it sparingly because otherwise it might break. Make it characterful too. She doesn't just get a new one because she's incredibly proud of herself for making it. That feels very in character for 13. And I say all of this because in storytelling, tension is everything. Everything. A story without any tension probably isn't going to be that great. And I don't necessarily mean tension as in the bomb is about to go off, we're all going to die, run for your life, but smaller, more intimate moments between characters on screen. Just like the sonic wall kills the tension of that scene in the Star Beast, having the Doctor scan a dead body just to tell us they're dead robs us of tension too. Because alternatively, you could have a companion rush over and feel for a pulse. Suddenly they're interacting with the body, they have agency in the scene, and what does that do to them? How does that make them feel? How does that affect their relationship with those around them? That could easily lead to moments of tension later on. If it was me, I'd set a few rules for the writers on the show. The Sonic can do the occasional new thing if it doesn't affect the overall plot of the story, but instead adds something new in terms of character, such as it being used to allow Rose to phone home from the future. I'd also give quite a few writers the note before they even start their script that they're not allowed to use the Sonic at all in their story. It would give the creators a slight challenge, but would also open up different storytelling abilities, making them have to think a little outside the box. Because I said in my Series 8 analysis video that one of the biggest strengths that Mummy and the Orient Express has is how strong all the side characters are, and this is because the plot forces them to interact. The Sonic is barely used throughout the episode. The Doctor tries to unlock a door at one point but fails, and that's kind of it. However, this could have played out very differently. If Jamie Matheson had went down the Star Beast route, fucking hell, sorry Russell, you're catching fucking strays in this one. But if he did and decided to make a screen with a Sonic, it would mean the Doctor wouldn't have to communicate with the other passengers on the ship. He could learn about the foretold himself, he could get the train's plans himself, not having to get Perkins' help. It would change the whole dynamic of the episode and really hurt it by doing so. Another rule that could be interesting is if you had to limit its screen time, maybe saying that it can't be used during the climax of an episode. This way you can do the whole locked doors stuff, scanning stuff, but know for certain it wouldn't ever be used in the resolution to a plot. And I could be talking out on my arse here because obviously I can't see the BBC's income, but I'm almost certain toys aren't anywhere near as important as they used to be. Kids aren't asking for the Sonic screwdriver for Christmas, so possibly it's a great time to try and do a season without one. And if not, give the Doctor the Sonic in the finale, that way it's still on screen, does a few things and you can make a toy, but it hasn't been used a ridiculous amount. Because sometimes stripping the character of something leads to more interesting storytelling. When working with writers, I always try to highlight how kind they've been to their characters and try to convince them to change that. A road trip movie is much more interesting in a scrappy, on the verge of breakdown camper van than a Ferrari. It's why I always prefer zombie things that are set in the UK, or anywhere really that isn't America, because we can't buy guns with a weekly shop. We'd have to fight zombies with kettles and woks, and that makes for a more entertaining and honestly, probably bloodier film. And perhaps that's it, the show has been just too kind to its lead lately. They've had a big family, they've got their friend back and they had free therapy on the NHS. They've been given a big TARDIS, had relationships with barely, if any, tension or friction, and even when things have affected them, it seems to affect them that episode but doesn't carry over to the next adventure. So maybe losing the Sonic is the come down they need. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe the show should get rid of the Sonic screwdriver for good, or is it now too iconic to scrap? Also, what's your worst use of it? The moment that made you roll your eyes harder than ever before? I'm still working on the I Wrote a Doctor Who episode video, and I will now have to go back and make sure I haven't used the Sonic too much. I don't think I have, but I'm scared now. Anyway, like, subscribe, all that nonsense, and I'll see you soon.